So, did you succeed? Let's now solve this together. Let's build this game together. And for that, I'm back here in ChatGPT. And here for my prompt, I'll start by assigning a role where I'll say you are an experienced game developer. I could add the programming language that should be used, but since we're simulating that I don't know anything about programming, or at least not a lot, I don't wanna tell ChatGPT which programming language to use because I simply don't know. I have no experience after all. So I'm just telling ChatGPT that it's an experienced game developer. Then I define the goal of this prompt, the main goal, and the main goal, of course, is to build a Monster Slayer game with the following description. And here, of course, you would have different ways of structuring that prompt. I'm going for a prompt where I'll actually paste in this entire description, which I gave you on this slide here. So here for me, I copied it and now I pasted it here into this input box so that I have my role and then my goal and then this description with all the details ChatGPT should need to build that game. Now I will also say that this will probably be fine, but if you're creating very long prompt descriptions, ChatGPT can sometimes get off the rails. So it might sometimes not provide the best possible response, and therefore it can sometimes be better to use the laddering technique and to break this complex problem up into multiple simpler problems. Here in this case, we could, for example, start by just asking for a turn-based game where the user fights a monster and where during every turn the player should be able to perform a regular or strong attack. And then in the next step, we could add the extra information that healing and strong attack should only be available every 5 or 3 turns, and we could add our win condition and all the other pieces of information. We could add them step by step by using multiple prompts. Here, I'm putting it all into one prompt and we'll see what we get. I'm also using GPT-4 here. If you're using an older version and you're not getting good results, you might want to try splitting up that prompt. Now here in this case, I'll send this overall prompt, this big prompt, which contains all the information, the entire game description, without those extra possible enhancements though. Those will come later, but the rest is in here, and we'll see what we get. Please also note that I did not add any extra information regarding the formatting of the response sent back by ChatGPT. Therefore, I basically get its default where I have some text and then the code. Of course, we could have told ChatGPT that we just want to have the code without any extra explanations, but here, since I don't have any programming experience, I might be quite happy to get some extra explanations. And therefore here, ChatGPT is going ahead and generating that code. And once it's done generating that code, we can give it a try and see whether it works. So here it's done generating the code. It's now just adding some explanation text here. But in order to run this code and to play this game, we of course now must be able to execute it. And of course you might know how to execute Python code, but if you don't know it, you could of course ask, how do I execute that code? We could send this prompt to ChatGPT, and since it knows that this is Python code, since it keeps its entire history and uses this entire history for follow-up prompts, it tells me that I, for example, need to install Python from the official website and that I should then save this code in a file that could, for example, be named Monster Slayer PY, and that then thereafter we should navigate in the terminal or command prompt to the folder that contains this file so that then there we can execute the file with the Python command. Here in my case, I already did create a folder and I opened it in Visual Studio Code, which is a code editor you can use for, well, editing code. You don't need to use it. You could put the code into a regular text file without installing that software, but Visual Studio Code, which is available for all operating systems, simply makes reading and working with code a bit easier. That's why I did install it here and did tweak it a bit visually to, well, look the way I want it to look. And with it installed and with my Monster Slayer game folder opened, I'll add a new file in that folder, Monster Slayer. And this folder with this file can be anywhere on your system. And this monsterslayer.py file in the end is just a text file, despite its extension. And we can copy the code into that file. So this code here that was generated by ChatGPT, we can copy it, paste it in here, so we get our Python code in here, and now we can execute that code. Now here, by the way, I also got one other folder which you can ignore, which is just some local Python setup thing I did here. In the end, it's just important that you paste this code into a file, that you then save this file, and that you then have Python installed to execute the file. Now, if you are using Visual Studio Code, executing that file is super simple. You can simply open such a new terminal here in Visual Studio Code, and this will give you your default system terminal integrated into Visual Studio Code and already navigated into this folder where this file is stored. And that makes executing that file with Python extra simple because you now just have to type Python and then that file name. And with that, if I hit enter here, the game is starting in the terminal because, as mentioned, it is a terminal-based game, a command prompt-based game. And now we can play it by, for example, choosing to perform a strong attack here. And now that I did that, the next round starts. You see some summary, how much damage we dealt, how much damage the monster dealt, the remaining health values, and then also which new options we have for the next round, which now started. And here you see that the strong attack is indeed not available because it should not be available, because it should only be available every 3 rounds. This was the first round, that's the second round. Now here I could heal, for example. Now I only have the regular attack available because the strong attack is still not available yet, and the heal also is not available anymore. So I'll choose the regular attack. Now the strong attack is back, but if I would try to, for example, heal myself, I would get an error that this is an invalid choice, and I would have to make that choice again. And now we can continue playing here, and you see, in my case here, the monster is almost dead. And finally here, I dealt 12 damage to the monster. It only had 10 health, so therefore now, indeed, it is dead, and I won. And now I can choose whether I want to play again by typing yes here, or if I don't want to play again by typing no or anything else. And here I'll just type no and quit